My stepdaughter triggered a teacher seizure to expose the boxes where kids were locked away. The day everything cracked open began like any other, me pulling into the school parking lot, early engine still ticking as I tried to settle my nerves. I'd only been stepdad to Violet for a year, but the routine had become familiar. Park, 15 minutes before dismissal, scroll through emails, wait for the bell. Except that afternoon, Principal Davidson was already waiting outside, stiff in his suit hands clasped like he was holding bad news too fragile to drop. My stomach sank instantly. Nothing about his face said routine. There was an incident with Violet during testing, he said, voice low and rehearsed. An incident. The word pressed against my ribcage like a blade. He explained that Violet had deliberately triggered her teacher's epileptic seizure, used a strobe light app on her tablet, flashing it at Miss Bering until she collapsed. EMTs had already cleared her, but the teacher was demanding expulsion. Expulsion. My 9-year-old, who cried when she stepped on an ant, accused of attempted harm. Even before I saw Violet, my mind was breaking under the weight of it. Violet, who once begged me to pull over and rescue a worm, wriggling on hot asphalt, now painted as violent. Something didn't add up. When we entered the office, Miss Bering herself was waiting, supported by her husband. Her skin was ashen, her jaw locked, medical papers trembling in her husband's grip. Your daughter tried to murder me, she spat, voice cracking under fury. 20 students saw her do it. I'm pressing charges. My knees nearly buckled. Murder Violet was just a child. But through the glass wall of Davidson's office, I could see her small frame swallowed by a leather chair, her special needs lanyard twisted in her fingers. Her face wasn't blank with guilt. It was alert, defiant, almost too calm. We stepped inside. Davidson opened his mouth, but Miss Bering's voice sliced over him. She's manipulative, disturbed, dangerous. And then Violet's voice cut through the air, clear and sharp. You locked me in a box. Everything stopped. Even the humming fluorescent lights seemed to falter. Miss Bering blinked, startled. What, it's not a calm-down corner? Violet said louder. It's a refrigerator box. You tape it shut and shove me inside every test. You drag it into the supply closet and lock the door. Her words weren't frantic. They were steady, deliberate, like testimony from someone who had rehearsed survival. I froze, heart hammering. Violet's voice rose, describing the suffocating darkness, the tiny air hole she could barely breathe through. The time she screamed until her throat bled, only to hear her teacher's muffled orders ignore her. She's having a tantrum. Sometimes she wet herself because she wasn't allowed bathroom breaks. My hands trembled. Her husband's grip on her arm loosened, confusion crossing his face. What is she talking about? Violet went on, standing now on the chair as if climbing above the years of silence. Joseph was in the dishwasher box this morning. From 9:15 to 9:38. I watched the clock. He screamed he couldn't breathe. Then he puked and it had nowhere to go. He went quiet after 15 minutes. I thought he was dead. So I used the light to stop you. Silence. Real, suffocating silence. Davidson shifted uncomfortably. That's a serious allegation, called Sarah. Violet interrupted. She's in after school. She saw. Her tone was commanding, almost adult. The lawyer in me stirred. I knew the weight of a credible witness. Davidson hesitated. I leaned forward, voice like steel. I'm an attorney. Call the girl or we file paperwork until midnight. 5 minutes later, Sarah shuffled in, small and shaking. She glanced at Miss Bering and pressed against the wall, terrified. Sarah, I said gently, is there a box? Her eyes darted, then down. Yes. Refrigerator box for Violet. Dishwasher box for Joseph. Chris had one too. The room cracked open. Miss Bering's husband stepped away, face twisted with horror. You trap kids. You. His words faltered. Violet's voice crescendoed. Chris moved schools after 3 hours in his box. Dexter too. Lacey doesn't speak anymore. You ruined them. Miss Bering collapsed against the wall, shaking. Her husband muttered, you're sick, before storming out. Davidson paled, muttering about checking the closet. Minutes later, he returned carrying flattened cardboard slabs, duct tape, still clinging in silver scars. Names scrawled in black marker of Violet, Joseph, Dexter, tiny knife-slit holes cut for air. The evidence sat heavy in his hands like corpses. I pulled out my phone, one arm still around Violet, and texted my wife. We need to talk. Something serious happened. Her reply came instantly, handled quietly, right not is Violet. Okay, not what happened. Just quiet. My chest constricted. She knew. My wife knew. Miss Bering had slumped into the corner, sobbing like a broken animal. But I barely registered her anymore. All I could see was Violet's wide eyes, the tears she fought to hold back. She wasn't a liar. She wasn't violent. She was a survivor standing in the ruins of adult silence. And as I held her trembling body, realization seared me. The monsters weren't hiding under beds. They were standing in classrooms, sitting across dinner tables, sleeping beside us at night. Ask yourself, what would you do if you discovered the person who promised to protect your child had known about the abuse all along? I carried Violet out of that office like she was still small enough to need me, though she's 9 and usually insists she's too old. She clung to my neck the entire walk through the halls. Students stared, teachers whispered, none of it mattered. All I could hear was the echo of her words. You locked me in a box. In the car, she sat in the back seat, legs pulled up against her chest, staring out the window. I started the engine but didn't drive. My hands were shaking too hard on the wheel. Finally, I whispered, Violet, is it true? Did she really put you inside a box? Her head turned slowly. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just nodded. She called them quiet spaces, Violet said. Her voice was flat, like she'd told this story 1,000 times, and nobody ever listened. Mom said they were special, said they helped kids think better. Mom, my wife. I swallowed the taste of bile rising in my throat. You told her lots of times, Violet whispered, tracing a finger against the fogging glass. She said other parents wouldn't understand, that you'd get confused because you're not a teacher. Every word was a nail hammering into my chest. The woman I married had chosen silence, chosen convenience, chosen test scores over her own daughter. I pressed harder on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Violet, why didn't you tell me? Her answer was so soft I almost missed it. Because Mom said you'd just be mad at me for failing tests. The words cracked something in me. This wasn't just about a cruel teacher. It was about trust being poisoned from the inside out. I started driving, though I couldn't remember the turns I took. My mind was already racing CPS lawsuits, district liability. But beneath the lawyer in me, the father in me just kept thinking, she was screaming inside a box and nobody came. My phone buzzed. A message from my wife. Handled quietly, right. Handled quietly. Not, is she okay? Not, where are you? Just quiet. My fingers trembled as I typed back, no. This isn't quiet anymore. Her reply came seconds later. We can talk at home. Don't make this bigger than it is. Bigger. My daughter. My stepdaughter. But God, she feels like mine had been duct-taped inside a cardboard coffin. And my wife wanted quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, Violet finally spoke again. Dad. The word caught me. She doesn't call me that often. Yes. My throat was raw. Her eyes flicked up to mine in the rearview mirror. Joseph stopped moving. I thought he died. That's why I used the light. Her voice broke then, and the tears finally came. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed so hard her body shook. I climbed into the back seat and pulled her against me. You did nothing wrong, I whispered. You saved him. Do you hear me? You saved him. That night she refused to sleep alone. I made her a little bed on the floor of the guest room beside mine. She curled up with her stuffed rabbit, one hand gripping mine until her breathing evened out. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, every creak of the house echoing like duct tape tearing off cardboard. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. Joseph's parents. His father's voice was ragged, trembling with fury and grief. He had a panic attack so bad, they had to sedate him. He woke up screaming he couldn't breathe. I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead into my palm. You're a lawyer, right? The father asked. Will you help us? We're filing charges against everyone who knew. Every single one of them. Everyone. Including my wife. I hesitated, guilt choking me. I can't. Conflict of interest. But I'll connect you with someone who can fight. He exhaled sharp through the line, then said something that nearly broke me. Our son said Violet was the only reason he's alive. She kept count of the minutes. She screamed until someone came. After we hung up, I went back to Violet's side. She stirred, clutching my hand tighter. I whispered, you're braver than any of us, kiddo. The next morning, the sun poured through the blinds like nothing had changed. But everything had. Violet ate her cereal in silence, shoulders hunched, eyes hollow. I packed her lunch even though I knew she wouldn't be returning to that school. Not ever. I glanced at my wife across the kitchen. She was scrolling, her phone, jaw tight, eyes darting. You're overreacting? She muttered. It's not as bad as it sounds. I wanted to scream. Instead, I walked out with Violet's backpack in my hand and a single thought burning through my skull. If I don't fight for her, no one will. Ask yourself, if your child whispered the truth in the backseat, but the person you loved begged you to bury it, who would you betray, your marriage or your child? By the time we got home, I was already rehearsing the confrontation in my head. I had the photos Davidson sent me, flattened cardboard with duct tape scars, names written in black marker. I had Violet's words, her terror, her shaking body pressed against mine in the car. I had Joseph's parents calling me from the hospital. I had enough. My wife was waiting in the kitchen, arms folded like she'd been bracing for a debate, not a reckoning. You can't blow this up, she said, before I even opened my mouth. Violet exaggerates. She has trouble focusing, you know that. These were interventions. Methods. Approved by the district. Methods. My voice cracked into a laugh I didn't feel. You're calling duct taping children into boxes a method. She didn't flinch. Calm down. They're quiet spaces. Lots of classrooms have them. Sensory rooms, calm down corners. It's not as dramatic as Violet makes it sound. I pulled up the photo on my phone and shoved it across the counter. Look at that. Tell me it's a calm down corner. Tell me those air holes aren't meant to keep her barely breathing. For the first time, her face faltered. Just a flicker. But she recovered quickly. Maybe they used too much tape? I didn't know it was that bad. I thought you knew. I snapped. My voice shook the cabinets. Don't lie to me. You knew she was being locked in there. You told her not to tell me because I wouldn't understand. And you were right. I don't understand how a mother can let that happen to her daughter. Her jaw clenched. You think I wanted this? The district threatened to move her if her scores didn't improve. Do you know what happens when kids like Violet get transferred? They get lost. Forgotten. I was trying to protect her future. By sacrificing her present. My voice broke. By letting her scream inside a box. Violet stood in the doorway, then small and trembling, listening. My wife turned, softening her tone. Honey, they're just strategies. Teachers know best. You have to trust the system. Violet's face hardened in a way no 9-year-old should. She whispered, you trusted her more than me. Then she disappeared up the stairs. That single sentence hit harder than anything else. I stared at my wife, fury boiling under my skin. You minimized it. You excused it. And now CPS is involved. Her eyes widened. What? The doorbell rang as if on cue. A woman in a gray suit introduced herself as Lori Shoren from Child Protective Services. She carried a folder thick with forms and a face card from Stone. "I need to speak with Violet privately," she said. My wife protested instantly, pacing, insisting it was all a misunderstanding. Lori silenced her with a look. "It's procedure. You may not interfere." I sat at the kitchen table, listening to the muffled voices upstairs, while my wife stormed back and forth like a caged animal. For 40 minutes, Violet spoke, and my wife fumed. When Lori came down, she looked directly at me. "We're opening a formal case. Violet is not to be left alone with her mother pending investigation. Visitation will be supervised." My wife's scream was raw, almost feral. "You're ruining our family over nothing." Lori handed me paperwork without blinking. "We'll be in touch within 72 hours. Then she left, the echo of her heels fading down the walkway. The glass of water on the counter shattered as my wife hurled it against the wall. "This is your fault. You're destroying us." I wanted to argue, to throw every piece of evidence in her face. But the only sound I heard was Violet's voice from the night before. "You trusted her more than me." I gathered my pillow and blanket and shut myself in the guest room. An hour later, there was a knock. Violet stood there in pajamas, rabbit tucked under her arm. "Can I sleep here?" I made her a little nest of blankets on the floor. She reached for my hand, gripping it tight until she drifted off. I stayed awake, every muscle rigid, listening for footsteps outside her door, promising myself she would never again be silenced. By morning, my wife had packed a bag and moved to her sister's place. The house was quiet, in a way that felt both relieving and dangerous. Violet actually hummed while brushing her teeth, a sound I hadn't heard in weeks. But the nightmares came back that night, her screams ripping through the dark, her small body wedged against the dresser, sobbing that the walls were closing in. I held her until the shaking stopped, but the helplessness in my chest felt like it might swallow me whole. The next day, Detective Jackie Kingston from the department's Special Victims Unit called. They wanted Violet's statement at the Children's Advocacy Center. Her voice was steady as she explained the process, but all I could think was how surreal it was to hear my child described in the language of victims and testimony. I hung up and sat at the kitchen table staring at the CPS paperwork. Somewhere across town, my wife was probably spinning her own version of events, justifying, minimizing, convincing herself she'd done nothing wrong. But in my house, the truth was undeniable. Violet had spoken. And once a child breaks their silence, the whole world has to decide, believe her or betray her again. Ask yourself, if your partner called torture a method, would you stay and fight beside them, or fight against them to save your child? The Children's Advocacy Center looked nothing like a courthouse or police station. Bright murals of cartoon animals covered the walls, and the waiting room had bins of toys meant to soften the edges of fear. But Violet wasn't fooled. She sat stiff in the chair beside me, her rabbit clutched so tight its ears bent sideways. Inside the interview room, they asked me to wait behind the glass. A trained interviewer knelt beside Violet at a low table covered in crayons and paper. At first, she wouldn't speak, just dragged the black crayon across the page again and again until the paper tore. Then slowly, she began to draw the box. Heavy black walls, a tiny slit near the top for air, a smaller figure curled up inside. She added a second drawing, Joseph folded in the dishwasher box, his mouth wide open in a scream. Next to it, she scribbled orange lines, spilling out vomit. My stomach twisted. Seeing it on paper was worse than hearing it. When the interviewer asked how long Joseph was inside, Violet's voice barely carried through the glass. From 9:15 to 9:38. I counted every second. Every second. The interviewer took photos of her drawings. Violet kept going, sketching Dexter, Chris, even a girl named Lacey, who no longer spoke. With each picture, she looked older, heavier, like she was shedding childhood with every stroke of the crayon. When the session ended, she walked out gripping the drawings in her fist. "Can we take these home?" she asked me. "Yes," I whispered throat raw. As we left, Detective Kingston pulled me aside. Other families are coming forward. Joseph's parents, Chris's. Even a janitor who says he cut a boy out with a box cutter once. This isn't isolated. I nodded, though my mind was already somewhere darker. What else had been hidden in plain sight? That night, I logged into the shared desktop my wife and I used. I wasn't looking for evidence, not really. But when I clicked through her folders, I found one labeled school stuff. Inside were dozens of emails between her and Miss Baring. My chest constricted as I read Violet's struggles with compliance during exams. "We need her scores higher, or the district will transfer her. Don't worry, I have methods that guarantee focus." Attached were photos. Actual photos of the box's refrigerator dishwasher sitting in the supply closet. Strips of tape dangling like scars. My wife had replied with a thumbs-up emoji. My vision blurred. She hadn't just known. She'd approved. I printed everything page after page until the printer jammed under the weight of it. The evidence lay on the desk like a pile of corpses, and all I could think was she chose this. The phone buzzed. A text from her attorney? Yes, her attorney. She'd lawyered up already. Before CPS had even finished their first round of interviews, she had legal counsel ready. The timing chilled me. Innocent people don't prepare their defenses before the accusations are even written. The next day, the janitor called me. His voice was rough guilty. "I have footage. Security cameras in the hallway. They show her dragging the boxes into the closet. More than once. I saved copies, in case someone tried to delete them." He offered to hand them over to the detective, but I insisted on meeting too. When I watched the grainy video later that evening, I nearly stopped breathing. There she was, Miss Baring, heaving a refrigerator box across the hall like it was nothing. Children's voices echoed faintly through the audio, but all I could focus on was the timestamp. 8:42 a.m. Box dragged in. 9:09 a.m. Box dragged out. 27 minutes. Longer than Violet's count, longer than anyone admitted. I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands ached. At bedtime, Violet asked if she could sleep in my bed. I nodded, pulling back the covers. She climbed in and curled against me. Just before sleep took her, she whispered, "Dad, do you think the other kids will tell too?" "I think they already are," I said. Her eyes closed. "Good. Then maybe no one will forget." I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the sound of duct tape tearing replaying in my head. My wife had called it a method. The district would call it an intervention. But Violet had drawn the truth in black crayon. It was a box. A prison. A coffin with a slit for air. And tomorrow, when the district tried to bury it under paperwork and NDAs, I would have to decide, was I willing to burn every bridge, career, marriage, reputation to keep that box open to the light? Ask yourself if you found the evidence sitting in your own house, signed with your spouse's approval. Could you ever look at them the same way again? The district office smelled of burnt coffee and fear. I was ushered into a long conference room where the superintendent sat flanked by 2 lawyers and a PR specialist, scribbling notes like she could spin duct tape into gold. They started with practice calm. "We take these allegations seriously. Of course, we want what's best for the children." I dropped the folder of printed emails onto the table. The sound made all 3 lawyers flinch. Allegations. These are receipts, emails, photos. Your teacher was taping kids into boxes. The superintendent smoothed his tie. "We can't speak to specifics during an active investigation. Save it," I snapped. "You knew." They exchanged nervous glances. Then came the offer. A settlement. $50,000? A non-disclosure agreement that would keep me quiet, keep Violet's story buried. "It's not an admission of guilt," the PR woman chirped, her pen already hovering over a blank line. I stood. "You want me to sell my daughter's screams for 50 grand? Go to hell." Outside, news vans crowded the sidewalk. Reporters swarmed Joseph's parents as they held up medical records, voices cracking with rage. His mother sobbed into the cameras. His father shook the papers like proof of life or proof of death narrowly avoided. That evening, the story hit every local channel. Teacher locks children in boxes. Violet's name wasn't mentioned, but I saw her in every headline. She didn't see it, thank God, but she felt it. Kids at school texted her. Parents whispered. The world suddenly knew about the boxes, but none of them knew about the betrayal sitting inside our home. Because while the district scrambled, my wife doubled down. In our kitchen, she slid her phone across the table to me. Articles about calm-down spaces, sensory rooms, alternative interventions. See, she insisted. It's not abuse, it's misunderstood. Teachers everywhere use these. I stared at her, the rage rising hot. Show me one article that suggests duct tape. One that locks children in closets. She looked away. CBS is in this house, I said. Detectives, therapists. You think they're all confused? Or do you just need to believe you didn't fail her? Her lips trembled. For a flicker of a second, I saw guilt. Then it hardened into defiance. I was protecting her future. That night, Violet woke screaming again, wedged against the wall, gasping that she couldn't breathe. I held her until she calmed, but her body shook for hours. I barely noticed the damp circle on my shirt from her tears. The next morning, we met her new therapist, Kathy. A calm woman with gentle eyes, she sat across from Violet and asked her to describe box days. Violet fidgeted, eyes darting, until Kathy handed her a small piece of candy. Did your teacher ever give you these? Violet nodded slowly. After. She said I was brave. She said I was strong. Kathy glanced at me, her voice measured. That's called grooming. Rewarding trauma to normalize it. My chest clenched. Grooming. A word I'd only ever heard in cases I prosecuted, now tethered to my daughter. Later that night, my sister-in-law called in a panic. She locked herself in the bathroom. Pills! She's screaming it's over. Please, you have to come. For a moment, I almost grabbed my keys. Old reflexes, old love. Then I looked at Violet, asleep in the guest room, curled around her rabbit, finally breathing steady. I told her sister, call 911. Get her help! You heartless bastard, she spat. Family comes first. I hung up my hand, shaking, but I knew the truth. Family had to mean Violet first. 2 days later, the janitor handed Detective Kingston a flash drive. Security footage. Proof that the boxes weren't a one-time lapse, but a system. On the grainy screen, Miss Baring dragged the refrigerator box across the hall. Timestamps didn't lie, 27 minutes for Joseph, longer than Violet had even counted. The DA added child endangerment charges that afternoon. Meanwhile, my wife's mask cracked further. She showed up drunk at our front door, pounding, screaming that I stole her daughter. The police had to drag her away, mascara streaked down her cheeks. She spent the night in jail, her mugshot splashed online by morning. By noon, her marketing firm cut ties. We can't have someone facing criminal allegations representing our brand. That evening, Violet poked at her mac and cheese and whispered, Dad, is Mom a bad person? I set down my fork, searching for words that wouldn't scar her more. Being a good person isn't about never making mistakes. It's about fixing them. Right now, your mom is making choices that hurt. But you're good. You're brave. Don't ever doubt that. She nodded, but the question still lingered in her eyes. That night, while Violet slept beside me again, I scrolled through the comments under the news articles. Strangers argued about test pressure, about education, about whether kids today were too soft. None of them knew the smell of duct tape, the silence of a child who stopped screaming, the way your own wife could look you in the eye and call it a method. Ask yourself if the people in charge tried to pay for your silence with silver tape and settlements, would you take it? Or would you burn everything to keep the truth alive? The janitor's footage wouldn't leave my head. I kept replaying the grainy timestamp in my mind, 8:42 a.m. Dragged in, 9:09, dragged out. 27 minutes. Every second, a child suffocating inside cardboard while adults walked past, pretending not to hear. Detective Kingston called that night. We've added child endangerment charges. The DA is preparing for multiple counts. Her tone was clipped steady, like she'd said it too many times in too many cases. But my chest tightened anyway. I turned toward Violet asleep on the couch with a blanket half slipped from her shoulder. For the first time in weeks, she looked peaceful. I didn't tell her about the new charges. She deserved one night of quiet. The next blow came 3 nights later. I woke to pounding at the front door, furious, uneven thuds that rattled the frame. Violet shot up, eyes wide with terror. Dad! I shoved her toward the hallway. Go to your room. Lock the door. Don't come out until I say. Through the peephole, I saw her. My wife. Mascara-smeared eyes, glassy, stumbling, with a bottle in one hand. She was screaming my name, screaming that I'd stolen her daughter, that I'd ruined her life. I called 911. By the time officers arrived, she was slumped against the porch rail, slurring threats. They cuffed her gently, guiding her into the squad car as neighbors peeked through blinds. The red and blue lights painted our street in shame. The next morning, her mugshot was everywhere, local news, gossip blogs, even coworkers whispering in comments. Disheveled hair, mascara streaks. The caption read, "Mother arrested for violating protective order." At lunch, I got an email from her company's HR department. She has been terminated effective immediately. By the time Violet came home from school, the internet had devoured her mother. I tried to shield her, but kids talk. Parents whisper. She set her backpack down, eyes searching mine. Dad, is Mom a bad person? The question froze me. I sat at the table across from her, searching for words that didn't exist. Being good isn't about never making mistakes. It's about what you do after. Right now, your mom is making choices that hurt. But you're good. You're brave. Don't ever doubt that. She nodded slowly, though her eyes looked older than any 9-year-old's should. That night, after she fell asleep, I scrolled through the comments under the latest article. Strangers debated whether misbehaving was evil or just desperate for bonuses. Some blamed the school board. Some blamed parents like me for not noticing sooner. One comment cut through the noise. The evidence breathes. The children breathe. That's enough? I couldn't shake it. Evidence isn't just paper and timestamps. It's Violet's nightmares. Joseph's oxygen deprivation, the drawings torn through black crayon. The evidence breathes, and it's gasping. The DA's office called the next morning. They wanted Violet to testify by video. I felt my stomach drop. She's only 9, I argued. She doesn't have to sit in the courtroom, the prosecutor said. But her testimony is vital. Jurors need to hear it from the children themselves. That night, I sat on the edge of Violet's bed, the rabbit between us. Sweetheart, they might ask you to talk about the boxes again, on camera. You don't have to if you're not ready, but if you do, people will believe you. They'll stop saying it's just rumors. Her fingers tightened around the rabbit's ears. If I tell them, will they stop doing it to kids? My throat closed. Yes, that's the goal. She nodded, small but steady. Then I'll tell. The following week, Joseph's parents stood outside the courthouse with microphones shoved in their faces. His father's voice cracked as he said, "Our son can't sleep in his own bed. He panics when he sees cardboard boxes. But he's alive because Violet screamed." Violet watched the clip on TV silent. Then she whispered, "He's alive because I didn't stop counting." I hugged her so tight she squeaked in protest. But I couldn't let go. Not yet. A few days later, the DA confirmed Miss Baring would face over 20 counts. And my wife, the prosecutor, hinted her emails made her look complicit. She'd been part of the parent committee that approved the methods. She wasn't just negligent, she was entangled. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, Violet breathing softly beside me. The house was too quiet. My marriage was ashes. My career teetered. But one thing was clear. Silence wasn't an option anymore. The evidence breathed. And so did Violet. Ask yourself if the people closest to you became evidence against themselves, would you protect them? Or expose them to save the child they betrayed? The Family Services Center smelled faintly of bleach and crayons. Violet clung to my arm as the social worker explained the rules, 1-hour monitored cameras in the corners. No contact outside this room. When the door opened, my wife walked in. Her hair was brushed, her hands trembling. She looked smaller than I remembered, deflated. The second she saw Violet, tears spilled down her cheeks. "Sweetheart," she whispered, reaching out. Violet stayed seated, her rabbit clutched to her chest. She didn't move closer. She didn't move at all. The social worker nodded, giving permission. My wife sat across the plastic table, hands twisting in her lap. For the entire hour, she cried and apologized, saying she'd made terrible mistakes, that she loved Violet, that she was trying to change. Violet didn't answer once. She colored a butterfly in her book, carefully filling each wing with symmetrical colors. The cameras hummed softly overhead, recording every silence. On the drive home, Violet finally spoke. "The butterfly's for Joseph, because butterflies mean healing." I nearly had to pull the car over. That night, she taped the drawing above her bed. The next week, my lawyer filed for custody and divorce simultaneously. The betrayal was too deep to patch. When I found out she'd been emailing Miss Baring's lawyer about coordinating their defenses, any sliver of doubt vanished. She hadn't just ignored Violet, she'd aligned herself with her abuser. The court moved quickly. Emergency custody was granted to me. My wife fought nothing, not even the house. She signed papers with vacant eyes, as if she'd already lost long before the ink dried. Still, the supervised visits continued, twice a week. Each time, Violet grew quieter. After the second visit, she chewed her nails until they bled. After the third, she asked me if she really had to go. Yes, I told her, softly, hating myself. The court says so. She nodded, lips pressed tight, and climbed into the car without another word. At night, the nightmares returned. Sometimes she screamed about the box. Sometimes she screamed about her mother. Once she woke up sobbing that she was trapped between them both. I told her she wasn't. I told her she was free now. But even as the words left my mouth, I wondered if she believed me. Meanwhile, the school district spiraled. Principal Davidson resigned after emails surfaced showing he'd told Ms. Baring to handle problems discreetly. Parents packed board meetings, demanding answers, waving signs with their children's names in bold letters. The superintendent claimed ignorance, but documents told another story. Approval committees, budget bonuses tied to test scores, meetings where words like containment were scribbled in the margins. The district tried to distance itself. They rolled out promises cameras in classrooms, monthly welfare checks, alternative discipline training. But parents weren't buying it. Neither was I. One evening, Violet asked, will other schools use boxes? No, I said quickly, too quickly. She stared at me, unblinking. But they could. The truth hung between us. That weekend, we joined a support group in a church basement. 12 families sat in a circle, each carrying their own shattered stories. One father described finding his son sleeping in the bathtub because it was the only place he felt safe. A mother admitted her daughter hadn't spoken in months. A grandfather wept, describing how his grandson tried to hurt himself because he thought he deserved to be locked up. When my turn came, I said nothing. Violet squeezed my hand and whispered, tell them later. On the way home, she asked if she could keep going back. The kid's there. They understand. We started attending weekly. Meanwhile, my wife's spiral deepened. She called once, her voice slurred, asking if I'd bring Violet to see her outside the supervised hours. I hung up. The next morning, she left a voicemail instead, calmer but still manipulative. I know I made mistakes, but don't punish me by taking her away. We're still a family. I deleted it. That evening, Violet crawled into my lap, something she hadn't done in years. Dad, she whispered, do we have to see her forever? The weight of that question nearly crushed me. I kissed the top of her head and said, not forever. Only until the people in charge understand what you already know. She exhaled slowly, like she'd been holding her breath since the first box. The following week, during another supervised session, my wife tried to tell Violet that everything had been exaggerated by lawyers and teachers who wanted money. Violet looked up from her coloring and said in the calmest voice I'd ever heard her use, stop lying. The social worker's pen froze mid-scribble. My wife flinched as if struck. On the drive home, Violet was quiet, but her hand never left mine. Ask yourself if the court ordered your child to sit with the person who betrayed them. Knowing every minute added another scar. Would you obey the law or break it to protect the one thing worth saving? The courtroom was packed, the air thick with whispers and the faint rustle of papers. Parents filled every bench, some clutching tissues, others gripping each other's hands like lifelines. When Miss Baring was led in, dressed in a gray suit that tried to disguise the monster the room went still. The prosecutor rose, voice sharp. 23 counts of child abuse and endangerment. Each charge landed like a hammer blow. Parents sobbed openly. Joseph's mother buried her face in his father's shoulder. When asked to enter a plea, Miss Baring's lawyer spoke for her, not guilty. The words tasted like acid in the air. The judge set the trial date. Cameras outside would later blare headlines. But inside that room, all I could hear was Violet's voice, in my memory, 9:15 to 9:38. I counted every second. They arranged for Violet to testify by video. I sat beside her in the small office, a victim advocate at her other side. The camera's red light blinked. On the big screen in the courtroom, her image appeared, my daughter, too small for the chair rabbit tucked under her arm. She spoke softly, but her words carried. She described the darkness, the tiny slit of air, the smell of urine and vomit. She told them how Joseph screamed until he went silent and how she thought he had died. Jurors wiped their eyes. Even the court reporter's hands trembled as she typed. Then came the question that hollowed me out. Violet, how has this affected you now? Her chin quivered, but she held her gaze on the camera. I still dream I'm in the box. I wake up and can't breathe. I check the doors in her house to make sure they open. I don't like closets anymore. And sometimes, I think maybe I did something wrong because she always told me I was brave. Silence swallowed the room. On the other side of the glass, I pressed my hand to my mouth. The prosecutor gently ended the testimony, thanking her. The judge allowed a recessed parents flooding into the hall to catch their breath. That night, Violet crawled into bed with me again. She didn't say a word, just curled up, rabbit between us. Her breathing was shaky at first, then steadied. I lay awake, replaying every second of her testimony, the way she'd looked so small, yet carried the weight of every child silenced in that classroom. Days later, the district tried to spin the narrative again. Press releases claimed ignorance, insisted they'd never approve such methods. But documents told another story. Meeting minutes, budget notes. Phrases like containment strategies highlighted in yellow. Parents packed another board meeting, chanting for resignations. By the next morning, 3 administrators had stepped down. Cameras caught the superintendent sneaking out at dawn, arms full of boxes, the irony not lost on anyone. At home, Violet asked me if the boxes were gone forever. Yes, I told her. Gone forever. She tilted her head. But they still made them. so they could make them again. The truth in her voice chilled me more than any courtroom testimony. Meanwhile, my wife's name surfaced in discovery documents. Parent committee emails where she'd approved supply orders, sturdy refrigerator boxes, industrial tape. She'd joked once about getting ones that last the whole school year. Reading it in black and white was worse than hearing it whispered. She hadn't just allowed it, she'd helped build it. The custody judge reviewed the documents. He didn't mince words. This shows clear complicity. Until further notice, supervised visits only. My wife's lawyer argued bias, but the judge's gavel cut her short. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones thrust toward me. Did you know? Do you believe your wife was involved? How's your daughter coping? I pushed past them, gripping Violet's hand. She held on tight, her rabbit dangling. That night, we sat at the kitchen table. Violet doodled absent-mindedly while I sifted through more paperwork. Suddenly, she asked Dad, "Are we safe now?" The question was so simple, but my throat tightened. "Yes," I said. "We're safe." She studied me for a moment, then went back to her drawing. A butterfly again, wings stretched wide. But later, when I checked after she'd gone to bed, I saw what she'd added. In the corner of the page, faint in pencil, was a box. Small black, with a slit of light at the top. Even in freedom, the box lived on in her mind. Ask yourself, when justice is delivered in court, but the scars still sit in your child's drawings, has the evil really ended? Or does it just change shape? The trial moved forward like a storm, but home became its own battleground. Violet's nightmares came less often, but when they did, they were brutal. I'd wake to her screams, find her crouched behind the dresser, convinced the walls were closing in. I took the doors off our closets after the second time. She inspected each knob, each hinge, making sure nothing could trap her. Her therapist, Kathy, suggested small steps toward control. Nightlights in every room. A stuffed dog guard on her bed. Breathing exercises before sleep. Some nights it worked. Other nights, I'd still find her trembling, the rabbit clutched like armor. Meals turned into rituals. Mac and cheese was safe. Chicken nuggets safe. Anything unfamiliar, she refused. Trauma narrows the world, Kathy said. She wasn't picky. She was protecting herself. Meanwhile, my wife's shadow lingered even in her absence. Twice a week, supervised visits. Each one drained Violet. She'd return pale fingernails, chewed raw eyes too old. The second time, she whispered, "Do I have to keep going?" "Yes," I told her, though the word felt like betrayal. "The court says so." After the third visit, she stopped asking. She just climbed into the car and went silent. The social worker's notes confirmed it. Violet showed signs of distress, withdrawal, anxiety before and after sessions. Still, the system clung to its routines. At night, I sat at the kitchen table with piles of documents, emails, custody filings, settlement offers. My lawyer told me not to burn out, but how could I rest when my daughter's safety was measured in legal loopholes? The district kept unraveling. Headlines blared. Superintendent resigns amid box scandal. Principal emails leak. Parents demanded cameras in classrooms, regular welfare checks, new oversight committees. Promises piled up, but nobody trusted them. At one board meeting, Violet stood beside me, rabbit tucked under her arm. She was shaking, but when they opened the microphone, she walked forward. Her voice trembled, but she spoke, "Kids need adults who listen. Not boxes, not tape, just listening." The room fell silent. Then applause erupted raw and furious. I'd never been prouder. Back home, she taped another butterfly drawing above her bed. This one, brighter wings wide open. But in the corner, faint in pencil, still the outline of a box. That's the thing no court ruling erases. Trauma doesn't disappear, it mutates. Lives inside small rituals, a nightlight, a stuffed rabbit, a pencil sketch of a prison no one else sees. The DA called me the next day. Miss Baring had taken a plea deal, 2 years in state prison, permanent ban from teaching. Lifetime prohibition from working with children. Restitution ordered, though she'd likely declare bankruptcy. It wasn't enough, but it was something. My wife's case was murkier. Emails tied her to the parent committee that had approved the supplies. Purchase orders bore her signature. She'd even joked once about industrial tape lasting longer. Those words now lived in court transcripts, ugly and undeniable. The custody judge didn't hesitate. Supervised visitation only, 6 months minimum. Mental health evaluation required. Her lawyer argued bias. The judge cut her off. That evening, Violet asked will she ever stop lying. I didn't know how to answer. Maybe one day she'll admit the truth. But even if she doesn't, you know it. And I know it. That's enough. She nodded, then crawled into my lap, rabbit squished between us. For the first time in weeks, she fell asleep there, her breath steady against my chest. But later, as I carried her to bed, I thought about the box she'd sketched behind the butterfly. Ask yourself, when the person who betrayed your child is still called mom by the law, do you keep sending her back to supervised hours? Or do you fight the system itself to break the cycle? The courtroom gavel ended more than just a case, it split families into shards. Miss Baring's sentencing came first. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, called her actions unconscionable torture disguised as education. The words rang out like a verdict against every adult who had looked away. 2 years in state prison, lifetime ban from teaching. Restitution she could never pay. She wept as they led her away, but the parents didn't move. Their tears were for their children, not her. Then came the civil suits. Joseph's family won a multi-million-dollar settlement from the district. Other families filed too, each story adding to the pile of evidence, each one echoing Violet's whispers about the box. The district hemorrhaged money, promises credibility. Administrators resigned in waves, some slipping away at night with cardboard boxes of their own. And my wife, my ex-wife, now faced her own reckoning. Emails exposed her complicity. Purchase orders bore her signature. Her parenting classes finished, but Violet refused to attend overnight visits. The judge listened to her quiet, "I'm not ready," and kept the restrictions in place. For once, the system heard the child. At home, Violet healed in fragments. Therapy helped. So did Buddy, the little dog we adopted, who followed her from room to room like a bodyguard. She taped butterfly drawings all over her walls, each one brighter than the last, though sometimes in the corners, she still sketched boxes in pencil. Trauma leaves fingerprints you can't erase. Our support group grew. More families came forward, sharing stories of kids who couldn't sleep in their own rooms, who panicked at closed doors, who flinched at the sound of tape being torn. We sat in circles in that church basement, strangers bound by the same invisible scars. The DA's office wanted Violet to testify again at a policy hearing. She stood at the podium, voice trembling, but steady, and said, "Please don't make schools into prisons. We just need safe places to learn." The room erupted in applause. Joseph's parents hugged us afterward, tears in their eyes. Still, the quiet wars continued. CPS monitored our visits. Lawyers filed motions. My ex sent letters from therapy, 4 pages of apologies and promises to change. Violet read one, folded it neatly, and tucked it into her desk drawer without a word. She wasn't ready to forgive, and maybe never would be. At night when the house was still, I sometimes wondered if I should have seen it sooner. The boxes weren't built in secret. They were ordered, delivered, signed for. Adults joked about durability while kids suffocated inside. The guilt sat heavy, a quiet war inside my own chest. But then I'd hear Violet laugh, really laugh at Buddy chasing his tail. Or see her bent over homework, tongue between her teeth in concentration. Or watch her sleep without nightmares for once rabbit and dog nestled against her. And I'd know we were clawing our way back. The district tried to rebuild. Cameras in classrooms, parent hotlines, promises of transparency. But trust doesn't come in policy memos. Parents still peeked through windows at drop-offs, still grilled teachers at every meeting. We'd all learned the same brutal lesson: institutions protect themselves, not our kids. Months passed. Seasons changed. Violet grew taller, her laughter more frequent. Yet sometimes, in quiet moments, she'd ask questions that broke me open. "Dad, why didn't the other kids' parents believe them? Or if Mom loved me, why did she help them?" I never had perfect answers, only honesty. Some adults are scared of the truth. Some love the wrong things more than they love their kids. But I believe you. Always. She'd nod, eyes serious, as if storing the promise somewhere safe. The final hearing on custody came nearly a year after the boxes were exposed. The judge looked directly at Violet and asked, "Do you feel safe with your father?" "Yes," she said, without hesitation. "And with your mother?" Violet's silence lasted almost a full minute. Finally, she whispered, "Not yet." The judge closed the file. Full custody to the father. Supervised visitation for the mother until further review. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath for months. Violet slipped her hand into mine, her grip small but unshakable. That night, she taped one last butterfly drawing above her bed. This one had no box in the corner, just wings stretched wide, colors bleeding into each other. "Dad," she said sleepily, "this one's for me." And for the first time since the day she told me about the box, I believed we were going to be okay. Ask yourself, when the system shatters and families fracture, do you trust courts and headlines to heal the wounds? Or do you accept that the real war is fought quietly, at home, one nightlight and one butterfly at a time? Thanks for staying with me through all the twists and turns. It's been one intense ride exploring this together. Until next time, don't forget to like the video.